If the British Empire and its Commonwealth last for 1,000 years, men will still say this was their finest hour.
We stand for Queen,
country, and video games. BRB UK.
Worse teeth,
better accents.
Hello, and indeed ahoy, hoy, ladies and or gentlemen. Good day to you, good evening, or good some other time in between. It's BRB UK. I'm Dan. This is episode 282 of said podcast, where we shall be regaling your eardrums with fun times and tales of the video game variety. Shan't we, chaps? Won't we, Tim?
Good. Yes, we shall. Indeed.
Hi, Tim.
Hi.
Still impatient?
It's not my favourite VR game.
Get out.
That was pretty sharp.
Yeah, get out, Tim. And there's also Coleman. Coleman.
Hi!
Hi, Coleman.
I've got to go to work in the snow.
Have you? I'm sat at home looking at the snow.
Not looking forward to that.
Are they seriously going to make you go?
Yeah.
When you're a top secret international man of mystery,
right,
you can't take a day off just because of the snow.
No.
I mean, it is our idea of apocalyptic weather, and actually what apocalyptic weather would be. I think those two things are really quite different.
Well, I don't know about you, though. The last few days I have been going, I'm pretty sure this is how the Division starts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, seeing some of those, I think it was the M60, seeing some of the photos, that was like, yep, Division.
I have been dressed pretty close to my Division character this week.
Yep.
Did you have an iconic coat?
I have my iconic coat.
Did you have your iconic backpack?
I have my iconic backpack. I needed just like a glowy orange ring on me somewhere as well, and then I would have been all good.
Can I just say that the Division, people who cosplay as Division agents, it's the laziest bit of cosplay you can do.
That's Watch Dogs.
Oh yeah, that's true. Actually, you just need a baseball cap.
Bandana and a baseball cap.
Yeah,
Slightly moody look.
No, I can do those. That's fine. But I'll look like an absolute twat in a baseball cap and a neckerchief. We're talking of complete twats, but commanders in chief, not neckerchiefs. Donald Trump.
Gonna go back in time.
Well, one could argue that when Trump was in his prime, if ever such a thing did exist, in the 90s, kind of
when he used to do wrestling stuff.
He used to do the wrestling. That's exactly.
He didn't do the wrestling.
No.
He used to appear at a lot of events.
It did take the world's worst bump as well, there.
Oh, that was 2000s.
So, as we all know, the kind of awful episodes of gun violence are continuing in the States. And this is what happens when you have relatively unfettered access to guns. I'm not American. I'm not a historian.
Are you not?
No, I'm not an American. The Americans used to be English, but then they made a massive cup of tea in the Hudson River and we got really pissed off with them. Only because they put the tea bag in second.
Oh, the waste of tea.
I know.
You're going to put the milk in first to protect the china. Everyone knows that.
No, Coleman. You bad man. Don't get me started on that rant. But he, rather than blame guns, because, he gets a load of money from the NRA, the National Rifle Association, who quite merrily bankrolling Donald Trump's political career. So he's not going to have a go at them, but he will quite happily have a go at video games and how there might be some violent video games and how, ipso facto, they must be at fault.
I'd love to see some statistics for... And I have to preface this slightly with, I generally gave up lecturing Americans on guns after Sandy Hook. If you don't care about kids dying, nothing I say is ever going to convince you that you shouldn't be having guns. Anyway, so that aside for the moment, how many people in America get killed by guns every year? And I don't know the figures, but it's way too many. How many people in America got killed by video games last year? I bet it wasn't even a percentage of the figures, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
I mean, if you drop a switch off the Empire State Building,
that's going to kill someone.
Yeah.
That's true. If you drop an Ouya off the Empire State Building, that would kill someone.
Yeah, they got sharp corners.
Exactly.
But the argument being, this is what Donald Trump said. I'm hearing more and more people say the level of violence and video games is really shaping young people's thoughts. I don't know whether that's Trump or Michael Jackson.
I was going to say, your Trump sounds like your Michael Jackson, just
Trump
a little
Jackson.
bit lower. Michael Jackson on nitrous.
Trumper Jackson.
Trumper Jackson.
And then you go the further step, and that's the movies. You see these movies, and they're so violent, and yet a kid is able to see the movie if sex isn't involved. But if killing's involved, and maybe they have to put a rating system for that. Okay, so let's try and unpack that mad sentence.
There's so many things wrong with it. It's
I know.
Like, is it worth it? You're just...
I don't think we've got enough runtime to
you're
ever
just
unpack
picking
anything
apart
that
the
Donald Trump
dribblings
ever
of a
says.
Madman. I mean, in quick summary, there is age ratings. You have to be older to see some of the films he was probably referencing than you do to buy guns in America.
Okay, a couple of things to this. Okay, now, admittedly, I'm not the head of state of a country, but I'm fairly sure... No. I know. I'm fairly sure I've played more video games than Donald Trump, and last time I checked, only one of us is an orange, amoral... Okay.
Hold on, Dan. You mean you're not the president of Slough?
No, I'm not the president of Slough. We're a republic, and I'm angry about this.
So you're the queen of Slough?
No. Actually, a republic would have a president, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I've just got to point out, though, because I play a lot of video games, and from time to time I do find myself climbing up giant colossi to stab them in the head.
Do you? Because I spent, despite the snow, several hours trying to hunt a squirrel today. I made sure I had the chef's choice platter before I went out.
If I take down 14 Pomeranians, I get a really nice furry hat.
Oh, you do, don't you? Yeah, but I mean, I think this is the thing. It's lowest common denominator. I mean, I think we've had this argument before. There's been recent papers published about it and to and fro in the scientific press, which I'm not going to go into in mega detail, but it's really, let's face it, the low-hanging fruit here. Video games are such a pervasive entertainment medium these days. It'd be like saying, I've said it before, it's like, oh my God, did you hear that serial killers read newspapers, so we better ban all the newspapers because that's what's making them serial killers.
Yeah. It's the fudging of statistics.
I mean, it's not to say that with anything, some people unfortunately have disordered thought processes which manifest themselves in sociopathic tendencies. And locking all forms of entertainment and social commentary away from people is not going to solve that.
There was violence a long time before movies or video games.
Exactly, and one could argue that, certain things that are pervasive in society, looking at you, religion, have been the cause for bloodshed, of a lot more bloodshed over the history of mankind as well.
Yeah, that's a slightly larger argument that we possibly won't venture into. But even if you play devil's advocate and say that violent video games has had an influence on people being violent, okay?
Yes.
That may be true. And violent movies and other mediums before that, it's one of the things I always go back to is no one talks about pinball being evil anymore. But when pinball was a thing, the New York mayor basically threatened to shove all pinball machines into the River Hudson or something.
He banned them as being an addictive and overwhelming influence, and I think it was not until 2004 you weren't allowed to have more than, I think it was 2 pinball machines in a single room.
Yeah.
In the New York.
Yeah. No, it was insane. And of course, before pinball, it was comic books. But it's okay, he must therefore be a man of exceptional moral quality. And I'm sure, like Donald Trump, has never taken backhanders or deals off people involved in, the tobacco industry.
Donald Trump's one of the classic things of, he's never played a video game. He is a great advert for playing video games.
If anything, he's probably promoted the use of video games since he's been in power, because, God, people need to escape this reality.
Yeah, exactly.
Jesus, I'd play a bunch of The Sims if I lived in the US right now.
Well, actually, if you do see a photo of him, Melania Trump, and their son Barron, there is a certain Sims-like quality to them. You could just imagine, and Melania Trump's kind of got that vacant look to her.
She does look like an NPC.
She does. She is an NPC. Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if actually there was kind of a green crystal magically appeared over her head.
It's called a plumb bob.
Yep, exactly. But I mean, what we were trying to get to is like, hey, look, these rating systems actually already exist. There is obviously the Motion Picture Association of America. Funnily enough, there's also the ESRB, who have been, up to other stuff, which we'll come on to in a minute. But, I mean, I'm far too middle class to say this. But, the whole guns don't kill, the people behind them do. I'm not going to single robbers out for, other brands of criminal are available. And if you want to cut gun crime, cut access to guns. No private citizen has a need for a semi-automatic assault rifle at home or a 50 cal rifle.
Yeah, the AR-15 is a particularly deadly rifle anyway, and it's one of the most popular in America. That's this scary to me.
Replace all guns with light guns, then the world is more fun.
I understand America's long-term love affair with guns.
Well, it was all because, it's basically because of us British, okay? The whole purpose of the Second Amendment was that the populace would be able to take up arms and defend themselves in the face of tyranny. And, in that way, okay, fine, I can kind of see where they're coming from. But, I very much doubt they were talking about, as Tim said, AR-15s and all that kind of stuff.
If you want to have everyone owns a right to own a gun, I kind of disagree with that, but fine. But at least, for me, it was one of the classic, I can't remember which comedian it was, but was it Chris Rock? But someone said,
make the bullets really expensive.
Make the bullets stupidly expensive. You should have one bullet per gun. You shouldn't be having a gun that fires 15 rounds a minute or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Inkjet printer model is what.
Yeah. The problem there becomes very easy to make your own. It's relatively easy to make your own bullets. Something I shouldn't know, but know from too much American stuff.
That's about to say, if they're so worried about the deleterious effects that exposure to non-Trump approved media may have upon them, why not say, okay, you want to own a gun? You've got to declare absolutely everything you've ever done and let us know everything you've ever watched. You've got to submit to annual psychiatric review if you want a gun. You can still have a gun. You just got to go through all of these hoops and jumps and see how you like it.
I don't see why anyone in any...
Yeah, there's no reason to have a gun.
For me, if you were applying to own a semi-automatic rifle or a rifle that fires this many bullets a minute or an AR-15 or any of those type of guns, that automatically should disqualify you from owning any gun in a psychiatric test that I would give people. Because that's not the reactions of a sane person.
Well, I'm not even sure this is the case, because the problem is kids end up picking up their parents' guns and doing horrible harm to themselves and others.
That's the problem. It's not just you having a gun, it's everyone else around you having access to the gun. And it's proven statistics that owning a gun makes it more likely that you will be shot by the gun that you own. You or someone in your house is more likely to be shot by that gun than any attacker. And insurance premiums go up when you buy a gun and have a gun in your house.
It's almost like you've got a murder weapon just waiting to be a murder weapon at home.
If guns made things safer, your insurance premium would go down.
Okay, all I'm going to say is a comparison of gun-related killings as a percentage of all homicides. England and Wales, 4.5%. The United States, 64%.
Yeah, and anyone that then bleats on about us having knife crime, it's like national news if someone gets stabbed most days here, kind of thing. You know
I mean, the argument is, and I think this last will say on it, the argument about not having gun control is that, well, even if you had gun control, people would still use guns, and someone might still get killed by a gun. So what's the point of having the gun control, huh? It's you're such a bunch of morons.
Can I say my bit?
Yes.
Just to sort of steer away from the guns and focus more on the video game side of it and the movie side of it, there are age rate systems out there. He's suggesting they make their own age ratings that are governed, actually, done by the government and enforced. And the other thing seems to have been a motion to tax mature rated content, which it just seems they've gone, here's a problem, let's make money off of it. If they're serious about this, you have an age rating system, enforce it. I don't think there is a danger here, but if there is a danger, then make sure parents are following the rating systems properly by enforcing it.
Yeah, make sure parents set up an appropriate profile for the age of their child as well, so that it age gates any games from playing it automatically.
So, well, Trump also said the video games, movies, the internet stuff is so violent, it's so incredible. I get to see things that you would be amazed at. I have a very young son and I look at some of the things he's watching and say, how is that possible? Because you haven't turned parental controls on, you absolute That's why. Anyway, the ESRB, there's been a lot of, as we've said before, a lot of noise around loot boxes, it's possible ties to in-game gambling, all that kind of stuff, microtransactions, craziness.
Just last week we were talking about the Hawaii motions, they want to enforce laws against loot boxes, but they haven't said what those laws are.
And as a foil to that, the ESRB said, yes, we'll put some warning labels on stuff, but it's not really going to have much in the way of warnings. It's just essentially going to be, this game has in-game purchases. A bit like what you see on the App Store. None of the stuff about if you buy a loot box, don't, but if you did buy a loot box, what your expectation of goodies from that would be. So, so it's all about just flagging to parents that a game contains offers for players to purchase additional things, and I think that's kind of not really the point. DLC, in my mind, is very different than kind of psychologically manipulative loot boxes.
It seems they've done the bare minimum, basically, to get them by. I doubt this will have any influence whatsoever on a game's sales, but if it did have an influence on a game's sale and someone goes, oh, microtransactions in this game, I don't want my child having this, they might accidentally buy them, or they might pester me for them or something, and they don't buy that game, what's to then to stop them launching a game, later on bringing in microtransactions, and then just putting it in their second print run that's not really that important?
But that's exactly what I said, when we were talking about the warnings last week. Like, you can't communicate that on a box, and communicating at the point of purchase on the digital side, like, how much text is there already related to a game where you look at it and you don't read, I would say, I'd be surprised if most people read 1/10 of the text associated with a game when you're purchasing it as it is.
Well, I actually think kind of the way that kind of like the iOS App Store does it, where if you've set everything up correctly, and to be fair to the ESRB, they have actually got an online site which gives you step-by-step instructions how to enable parental controls on just about every gaming device you can imagine at the moment. But, I think it's set up in a way that if, like, someone who you said, like, this is one of my children, they don't have authority to do this themselves, it will ping the adult a notification. Just go, hey, Jim Bob wanted to buy Deer Hunter 5 on his iPad. Do you want to allow this? Yes or no? Perhaps that's the kind of more direct way. I mean, that's one solution. I mean, there are, of course, other solutions where you can set child accounts to have a monthly budget, all that kind of stuff.
I'm just imagining a family, 3 kids. They all get, like, latest Pokemon Go app update or whatever, and they can't start rinsing the microtransaction. And there's one poor mum just getting hammered by all the notifications of every single microtransaction going on. It's going to be a nightmare in itself. No?
You've got to weather the storm, parents. Weather the storm. But, I mean, I think the thing is, though, this is a bit, thin end of the wedge, as already said. And, I actually think that there is a place for, and again, I have no idea, just thinking off the top of my head, the perfect solution to this. Surprise, surprise. But I really do think there needs to be more transparency about when you buy something that has randomized content in it, what your chances are of not perhaps getting a specific item, but what your chances of getting the various grades of item are.
Yeah, and I think that is a good sort of halfway solution, but I also don't think that those sorts of purchases should be in games aimed at universal markets and which, as I said, we discussed last week, puts FIFA and other games like that into question.
Yeah, I mean, the only way we can stop game companies doing this kind of nonsense is to stop buying the bloody things.
But that's the thing. They are popular and people buy into them, and as long as that remains the case and they keep on catching all the whales they can, then they're going to keep on fishing for whales.
They're called Welsh people, Tim.
Sorry.
They're very prone to microtransactions and loot boxes.
Welsh people can't resist them.
Trying to get this Zenyatta costume!
Bloody microtransactions won't give it to me!
That Tom Jones, he loves Overwatch.
He loves it, he does. Hello, I'm Tom Jones.
Loves a good loot box, that's Tom Jones.
Another duplicate! Why? Anyway.
Yeah. So, Tim, there's something you wanted shoved on the agenda at the last minute. Tell me about the thing you wanted.
Big news for the UK sort of thing. ReedPOP has acquired Gamer Network, and those two things may mean nothing to you because you might not know what. But basically, if I expressed it in terms of events, what if I told you that PAX bought EGX?
Okay, that makes a bit more sense. They both have a love for the letter X.
Yes, and it's also quite close to the truth, basically, because ReedPOP are the world's largest producer of games and pop culture live events, according to themselves.
That we've never heard of.
But apparently they are the people behind PAX, and we know PAX.
Yes.
But anyone that isn't familiar, PAX is the Penny Arcade Expo, because Americans can't spell Expo.
Well, neither can we.
We only copied them in the non-ability to spell things.
Well, but they copied our language first, so technically it's on us.
And also, I think you'll find the 90s define that X stands for extreme.
Yeah, indeed it does.
So basically what we're saying is Penny Arcade Extreme bought Eurogamer Extreme.
Cool. What does that mean for the world of
anyway,
EGX
for anyone who
Tim?
doesn't know, ReedPOP are the people behind PAX, basically. They run that event on behalf of Penny Arcade. I'd never heard of the company behind them. I didn't know there was it was one of those things. I assumed there probably was a company. I'd never heard of the company that was.
I thought they were the band that was made of harmonic stuff.
Well, that's quite possible.
Oh, that's Freeze Pop, sorry.
But, yeah.
No. It's flute-based covers of popular songs that the young people like. It's like kind of it's like
pop figures entirely dedicated to Mike Reed.
Mike Reed Pop.
Wow, that'd be good.
No, it wouldn't.
No.
Anyway, right, look, moving on a little bit. But for anyone that doesn't know, Gamer Network is the people behind Eurogamer. And under that umbrella is also Rock Paper Shotgun, Games Industry Biz, VG247, Outside Xbox, Digital Foundry.
Ooh, I know them.
US Gamer. Like, they're all, like, big names in slightly different things as
They're
well.
all things I read. So I've taken notice.
They also organise the biggest UK gaming event, as we generally go to each year, and other events like Rezzed as well. So there's EGX, which is the main event, Rezzed, which is coming up very soon, and I think tickets are available at the moment. That's big news for the UK, because it's the UK's biggest independent blog, and one of the biggest in UK gaming news and beyond that as well. Like, they've got quite a big reach in Europe. Obviously, US Gamer is a bit of a newer thing, but has been quite a steady growing brand as well. And I'll be interested to see if EGX suddenly becomes like
PAX London
UK or PAX London.
I doubt they will. They want to grow on a brand.
Also, they'd have to call it PAX Birmingham, technically. And
Although, technically, we will not be a part of Europe for much longer, so we may need to be doing a little bit of rebranding of our own.
Well, that's fine, because they stopped calling it the Eurogamer Expo and just abbreviated to EGX, so EGX could be anything. It's like B&Q. No one knows what that stands for. It's a mystery.
Bangers and
Qs.
questions.
But yeah, like as I said, it's interesting, big news for the UK, because not only does it make a big difference for a large blog and a large kind of journalistic setting, but also it is the big kind of event company as well. So it's two massive things for the UK. It seems to be, from the statements made by Rupert Lohman, head of Eurogamer, that seems to be they'll be carrying on in some regard. I think someone else is stepping up into his position, and then he's going into a more senior position within the whole company by the sounds of things. But yeah, we'll try and catch up with them at some point and actually get a heads up on some information and see how things going. But I'm kind of hoping that it will be business as usual for Eurogamer and EGX, but it'll be interesting to see the future of both, basically.
Talking of no future,
Yes.
PlayStation Plus.
Oh no!
No. If you got a PS4, right, Tim?
Yep.
You're golden. You're fine.
Oh,
Don't
phew.
worry about it.
Oh,
You shall continue to get the free things, the free things you pay for a while longer. But in a move that we all knew was coming, I think for one of these, but also it's a bit sad that it is coming for the other. They are turning off, as of 8th of March 2019, PS3 and PlayStation Vita will no longer get free games every month.
I'm okay with this news.
I am also okay with this. FYI, PlayStation 3 was released nearly 13 years ago.
The only way this wouldn't annoy me is A, if the PlayStation 4 played PlayStation 3 games, and B, if the Nintendo Switch had never come out and I still used my PlayStation Vita.
I don't use either of those consoles enough for it to really bother me, to be honest. It's kind of sad about Vita, though, because that's the only way I ever got any Vita games.
Well, no, the Vita was such a good bit of kit, and it was just criminally under-supported by Sony. Such a good bit of kit, really was.
I think it was let down by not having two sets of shoulder buttons instead of one set.
Indeed.
That was always my problem.
The cold shoulder, if you will.
And the inability to click the thumbsticks in.
But you could tap the back, Coleman. You could tap the back.
Yeah, but they always map those out terribly.
Always rubbish.
And actually, the touch area was far too... Certainly on the first-gen Vitas was kind of... You actually had to stretch to get it. And then on the second-gen ones, it was easier to get to, but it meant you just kept fiddling your whatnots.
Tell you what they did on Destiny 1 when you were dialing into it on the old PS4.
That actually was really good remote play on that.
Remote play was awesome, but what they did with the buttons is you had your two other shoulder buttons on each half of the screen, so you could use your thumbs on the screen. That was really good. I'd tell you what, though, that could be good news, though. Rather than bad news, this could be good news for PS4 gamers, at least, because they're not donating the resources to those two things. it means it's got more money available to donate to just PS4.
If we all buy digital games and they'll stop making physical games, and the money they save, surely the savings will go on to us.
Yeah, because that's how capitalism works.
I'm sure a single market wouldn't dictate the price.
Well, apparently it's still retail getting in the way of that.
If we all have one console...
So, but talking about working out if you're getting value for money in the digital space, Nintendo looked set to launch Switch game user reviews, presumably on the eShop. Promptly did so, then pulled the function. What was that about, Coleman?
Yeah, so last week 5 days ago from the time we were recording, they added the ability to go on Nintendo's official website, and when you went, each title on the Switch has its own dedicated page, usually with like links to the store and stuff, and they had a tab that allowed you to click on the tab and you could enter your own player reviews. Seemed handy, may have been abused a bit. Well, they didn't give a reason to it. If you then click on the review tabs now, it will take you to a little blurb explaining that this review functionality has been removed. Nintendo's since explained that this feature may be revamped and returned in the future, but there's no straight confirmation whether that is the case.
Speaking of Japanese companies not really understanding online functionalities...
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Tim, is that your first segue?
That might have been. Did you hear the one about Sega releasing the Yakuza 6 demo and accidentally releasing the whole game?
No. I heard they didn't release the demo. The demo didn't get released.
Yes. Well, they tried to release a demo, accidentally released the whole game.
That's not the full story of it.
Well.
So there's a special demo called Yakuza 6, the Song of Life demo. And the whole point of this, it was meant to have...
Sounds like bloody Eurovision.
Yeah, if you downloaded the demo, you basically downloaded a 36.53 gigabyte download.
Wow, that's a hell of a demo.
Yeah, a bit big for a demo. The reason for this, it was meant to have functionality that allowed you to carry over your save to the next game, but in such a way that you could do it instantaneously when the game comes out, because it was maybe out pretty soon, but it's been pushed back. And for some reason, there was a way, if you completed the game in such a time or in such a way, you got the whole game straight away, unfinished.
Nice. Good cheat code.
That is pretty gangster, to be fair. See what I did there? Yakuza? Yeah.
That's pretty Yakuza.
That's pretty Yakuza, that is.
No,
Tony Hawk is dead.
No, he's not.
Tony Hawk is not dead.
Tony Hawk is not dead, but he's finally done what he's been trying to shake. He's been trying to shake off the corporate image that he's acquired, and he's finally cut some ties with Activision.
Do we think the contract ran out? Because wasn't it still going for a while?
No, well, what happened? Well, it's still going. The license. So let's explain this properly. Tony Hawk Pro Skater with Activision.
Yep.
That series seems to be dead, and there have been a lot of fans of the series, we'll call them fans of the series, on Twitter, contacting Tony Hawk, asking when particular versions of games will be remastered or remade for newer consoles, and also complaining about the most recent version, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5. Now, if you don't know, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5, it has recently been put on sale, like a really good deal, something like £4 or £5.
That's still not a good deal for that game.
Well, if you remember when I played the game, it's actually not as bad as everyone said it was. If you just like old school Tony Hawk and don't want all the extra rubbish that goes along with it, it was a pretty serviceable game. The problem was those servers aren't up anymore, so if you download the game, most of the functionality isn't there anymore, and it's pretty horribly broken because they've stopped patching it a long time ago as well.
An allegory for the increasingly geriatric Tony Hawk, no doubt.
Yes, I think they released 2 patches on that game and then gave up because of all the bad press and people not playing anymore. So all these people, rather than complaining to Activision, have complained to Tony Hawk himself.
To be fair, it does have his name
Birdman.
on the game. I can understand, like, it's still being stupid, but I can understand the stupidity.
It's like that Monty Python sketch, isn't it? It's like, no, it's just the name of the shop, Gov.
Anyway, Tony Hawk has been on Twitter and has decided to put out a statement to reply to all these people in one hit, and he said, to anyone asking me about remaster old games or complaining about the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater servers being down, Activision owns the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater license, but I am no longer working with them. If I had the skills/authority to reboot servers or code games for newer systems on my own, I would be happy to.
Now, that brings me to one final point on this. I want to play a game that Tony Hawk has coded. I want to see that game.
I bet you don't.
No. I want to see it.
We have a whip round,
right?
Because I've been looking at some courses at the Learning Tree.
Okay.
We'll send Tony Hawks to... I can't remember where the Learning Tree is situated, but we'll send Tony Hawk to one of those classes, and we'll teach him some C# and
Nice.
some PHP and some .NET, and off he goes.
It's all about Unity these days. Let's just get him straight on Unity. Let's not mess about.
Okay.
Yeah, get him on that.
Oh well, yeah. We'll send him Game Maker. That's pretty easy to use.
Yeah.
Game Maker, make me a game.
Yeah, or RPG Maker, which, as far as I can work out, is what Square Enix used to do Chrono Trigger on Steam.
Tony Hawk's Undertale. Or Pro Skater Undertale.
I don't know about you guys.
Like Pro Skater Underground.
I care more about... I'd like to see another snowboarding game before I see another skateboarding game, to be honest, but still.
There was a time where if I saw the name Tony Hawk Pro Skater on a game, then it would be a day one purchase for me. But yeah, that series went down a long time ago.
Yeah.
Sadly. About the time they started making plastic skateboards.
I actually got put off it before that, but still.
Oh yeah, Project 7, Project 8, or Project 8, Project 9. I can't remember what they were called.
I actually bailed, to use a slight pun. I actually bailed on it a bit earlier when it got really complicated and everyone else really loved it. I fell out of love with it. Like, it was like, this is more complicated than I wanted to be. When it had all the manual things that you did to link tricks between different things.
Well, it was all right. It gave you back some time to shout at the kids to get off your damn lawn.
Yes, exactly.
As soon as they added in slow motion scenes where you had to manually move the board with the thumbsticks in an attempt to try and outdo Skate, which was the rival at the time until Skate broke itself. Yeah, that's when I fell out of love with the game. But I used to follow that series through Underground and Wasteland and
Wombling Free, didn't you, Coleman?
Tony Hawk's Pro Skater Wombling Free was my favourite of the series.
Oh, that is the best Tony Hawk's.
That is the best one.
So there's also this week a new teaser trailer has surfaced, which has announced a new mobile AR game in the same vein as Pokemon Go. It's called Ghostbuster World.
Oh, why didn't they call it Ghostbusters with the AR?
Ghostbust ARs.
That's why I'm not employed in the games industry.
That'd be Ghostbust Arse.
Ghostbust Arse.
Anyway, as predicted by our very own Mr. Timothy Kenneth James Hibbs back in BigRedBarel UK 2002 202 back in 2016 is what I meant to say. Players will be able to use smart devices to catch spectres, ghosts, and apparitions. The game is coming to Android and iOS this year, although specific release date and price have not yet been revealed. I'm guessing free. More information will be announced at the Game Developers Conference next month.
Who are you going to call, Dan?
My mobile company?
You don't
GDC.
say that anymore. It's not who you're going to call anymore. It's answer the call.
Because they're calling you.
Good.
Because who are you going to call? You.
I liked Pokemon Go, but I like my battery life on my phone better, so I stopped playing. But yeah, I gave that a fair shout. Don't think I'm going to do the same with Ghostbusters. That license been kind of ran dry for me, sadly.
Oh well.
Also this week, Square Enix surprised announced a launch of Chrono Trigger for Steam.
It's poo.
Unfortunately, yeah, the all-time greatest RPG, according to many people, it's a bit rubbish because it seems they've released that shoddy mobile version of the game on PC. Why do people keep doing that?
Because it makes money.
Because it's cheap and people will buy it. And put it this way, apparently it's like when you got the name entry screen, it's like kind of your first program in Visual Basic. It just pops up a blank Windows dialog box asking you to type your name in. It's like, oh my god, really? It's still got all the touchscreen stuff baked into it. So yeah.
Sadly. But yeah, so that version includes 2 additional dungeons, updated graphics, sound, mouse and keyboard functionality, as well as controller support, and there's a new auto-save feature in addition to save point functionality, which was in the original game, and also contains a remastered soundtrack. Basically, everything that's in the mobile version. Surprise, surprise.
Shame on you, Squeenix.
Shame on you.
Shame on you.
Shame.
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 Shame. Speech. Talking of speeches. Moss. Supermodel of the 80s and 90s.
No, you're confusing.
Cockney temptress.
Not Kate.
Orthodontically challenged supermodel.
The wrong type of moss.
The green stuff, then. The green stuff. No.
Also the wrong type of moss, although it might be a reference to that moss.
The guy from the IT crowd.
Also the wrong type of moss.
I'm out of types of moss. Tell me what you're on about.
This is a new type of moss. It's a mouse moss.
What? No. That's
Not to be confused with a mouse mat.
No, that's dyslexia. It's not moss. That's still mouse, mate. You just can't read properly.
It's a mouse called moss, though. Mouse called moss.
That's just bloody awkward. Why is he called moss?
Cute. She is a very cute little mouse called Moss.
Oh, why is she called Moss? Apologies for my unconscious gender bias there. I'm very sorry, actually. That was very poor form. So Moss, it's a PlayStation VR game, which usually makes me slip into a coma. But I've heard that this is a wonderful little game.
Yeah, and I responded to a thing earlier today when Shuhei Yoshida was commenting on the fact that Moss has got a Metacritic score of 84, which is pretty good for a VR game. Mm-hmm. But my only comment to that was, why is that mark so low?
There is nothing wrong with 84. 84 is a bloody good mark.
No. But my point is, this game is fantastic. I was looking forward to this game. I had very high expectations for it. It has exceeded my expectations in every regard. If you remember, this is the one where it's a small mouse. You are playing from the first-person perspective, but you're also in control of the mouse in the kind of third-person perspective.
Right.
And it kind of blends those two things together. The control method that they use, basically you're using the analog stick to move the mouse around and the couple of the face buttons to do the attacks. And then the actual triggers are your kind of interactions with the world and with Moss the little mouse. You can kind of see yourself in the world at times and stuff as well, basically. But the way you interact with the character and that goes back and forth is literally... I think this will be a defining moment in, a genre within VR. This is how you do a third-person storytelling action game. I don't necessarily think that this will... It could become its own subgenre in games almost aping this. It's that kind of good, and it solved a lot of the problems in terms of interconnectivity and stuff, basically.
So what do you mean kind of subgenres? Because what you've said so far, it kind of sounds like, admittedly, with a VR thing strapped to your face, but it kind of doesn't sound that dissimilar to, say, a Breath of the Wild kind of setup.
So, as I said, it feels different just because you've got that level of interactivity. Now, there's some part in the fact that you're moving the mouse character through the world and just kind of peering around corners and is there a secret over there? And kind of, there was points in this game where I've stood up to look over things so I can see the other side of things, so I can see, there's a little thing there for the mouse to go and get. Okay, fine. But beyond that as well, they've integrated that not only into the kind of the puzzle solving mechanics and kind of gazing at things, but it's an integral part of the combat mechanics as well. So when you're actually fighting, and there's quite a few fights in the game, and some of them are tricky, but they're almost more like another puzzle to solve. It's almost like a combat puzzle to solve rather than extremely hard combat necessarily. But say, for instance, and I won't spoil too much because there's enemies that you see later in the game and that come about, but the first enemy and the enemy that you've seen in the demo is a kind of beetle thing that you as the mouse can, as the mouse character can kind of fight with it, and you can just go up to it and hit it with your sword, and you can dodge attacks like you would in a normal third-person adventure game type thing. But then you, as the character in the game, can interact with both the enemy beetle in terms of you can actually drag it into a different position. Later enemies, you can do attacks with them as well. I won't get into that completely. I'm sort of glossing over a little bit, but you can drag a beetle onto a switch to then activate something so that you can do something else. But then beyond that as well, how you get health back to the Moss character is to literally grab the character and it reinvigorates their health, basically. And then also you can the little things. I'm fairly sure I got an achievement, and I haven't double checked this, but I'm fairly sure I got an achievement for high-fiving a mouse yesterday, which was quite cool. I've never seen anything quite like it in the way that it gets you to feel like you're in a world and interacting with it. And the kind of setup is a storybook, and it's very much in a kind of fantasy storybook adventure, and telling the tale of this mouse and their kingdom. And for anyone that played the demo, it kind of extends out from the demo. And as I said, it exceeded my expectations in some regards. One of the things just purely is the fact that it is graphically more impressive than it was. They've polished up the graphical side of things. Even stuff that was in the demo looks better in the finished game. I'm not even on a Pro as well. That's just on the standard PlayStation. So it looks really impressive. As I said, there's a kind of storybook presentation, and it starts out as you saw in the demo and then comes back to it throughout different points in the game, where you're in a kind of large grand hallway. It looks like a church, but in a non kind of religious building type thing, but there's books everywhere, and you've got like a big book out on a kind of lectern type thing. That book is the storybook that it kind of animates the pages of that, and you turn through the storybook as you're going through the story, and then you'll get to a page where it flashes in kind of white, but does it in a really good way. Usually a flash of white would be quite intense in VR, but they found a good way of actually doing it, so it's almost green, like you've got a green tinge to it, so it's not so harsh somehow. Anyway, but that kind of flashes, and then that brings you into the gaming world. And then when you're playing through the different levels, it's a kind of mixture of the combat that I was talking about before, and then just really ingenious, well-designed puzzles. There is an element of platforming, but it's more like puzzle solving a path via platforming rather than any really intense platforming. You know me, I don't like my platformers that much, but this I was absolutely fine with in that regard. It wasn't that challenging from that respect, basically.
So do you have like direct control of Quill the mouse?
Yes, and you are literally moving them around just by moving the left analog stick.
And she interacts with the environment by herself, so it's your job as the kind of...
No. You are every time she hits something, it's because you told her to hit something by pressing the button.
Right. I am deeply confused.
But that's what I'm saying. You are in direct control of the mouse, and at the same time, you are in you're an observer. Like you didn't see the demo, but in the demo, there's a portion that's at the very start of the game where literally you're meeting Moss for the first time. She comes over this little log, and then she picks up a little crystal, and then that enables her to see you for the first time, and you can see yourself as a reflection in the mirror. That's a reflection mirrored in the river that's in front of her. And your kind of face looks like Totoro, or it's one of the ones from the anime type things.
It's No Face from Spirited Away was the comparison.
Right, that's it.
I heard.
Yeah. As I said, it's the level of interconnectivity between the two things. Sometimes it's a bit like patting your head and rubbing your stomach, because you're trying to steer the mouse with the left analog stick onto like one switch and steer a beetle by moving the control pads in a certain direction, and he'll follow the way you're dragging it, kind of thing. And so, yeah, you're trying to do two things at once, and I've often like accidentally nudged the left analog stick and moved the mouse off the switch that I needed them to stay on and stuff like that. So it can get a little bit confusing at times, but generally it's really well designed for puzzles that involve that type of interplay between you, the environment, or the enemies in the environment. You're often like moving big hard things for her to like jump on top of, that she wouldn't be able to move by herself because they're massive objects to her type thing.
I have a question. Why does this have to be a VR game?
It wouldn't work any other way. Like literally, as I said, this for me is not just like answer some questions in VR. This is setting some benchmarks in VR, basically. This is a fantastic game that, for me, delivers on some of the promise of VR. Like, it's one of those things where I literally can't do it justice, and it wouldn't matter if I had video to go alongside it. That would not do it justice. It's one of those things it's like, you cannot be told what the Matrix is for yourself. You have to see it. It's a horrible thing to say in VR, but the more something is kind of more embedded and more like needing VR to show it off, the harder it is to describe it without seeing it in VR, basically. And I encourage anyone that has a PSVR headset to pick up Moss. It is fantastic. It is a really good way to show off your headset to other people, but it's a fantastic experience, and just like it's quite fanciful, and it feels like a kind of childhood's fantasy adventure type thing. And if that's going to turn you off, that's the only thing that I think would turn you off this game. It's generally fantastically well designed, fantastically interesting. And I've deliberately skated over things because I don't want to spoil them for people that I think will get enjoyment from discovering those things for themselves. And it feels like a journey of discovery and a real adventure, and something that's really worth taking part in, basically. So yeah.
But just on that point, without wishing to make you speak for another 4 hours about VR game. So you say kind of like the setting, it almost feels a bit like childlike. But bearing in mind the PSVR, I think it's got pretty hefty health warnings all over it about no one under 12 should use this device. Doesn't that put it in a slightly weird place?
No, right. When I say I don't mean childish in terms of, and this could possibly appeal to children. I'm not saying that it doesn't, but I'm saying it feels like an adventure from your childhood, or anyone that's seen. There's a board game that it actually really reminds me of called Mice and Mystics, which is kind of a universe of mice and stuff like that. And it really, as I said, I think it's something that there's a few games that I put in the, if you own a PSVR headset, this is an essential purchase as far as I'm concerned. And this is not only like on that list, it's pretty high up on that list. It may even be near the top. The one thing I've heard as a criticism is the length of the game is not that much. Now, people have said it can be completed in like 2 to 3 hours, or 2 hours even, I've heard a lot of people say. And I am like 4 hours in, and I know I've taken my time with it, and I've deliberately done so. I've wanted to soak it up. There's a collectible to find in the game where you're collecting shards of glass which add up to a picture. And it kind of it's an integral part of the plot of the game, which is why I kind of another bit that I kind of glossed over a bit, but it makes you even more determined to try and find some of those collectibles. So I've been trying to explore the environment and trying to look around a bit, and I think I'm right near the end of the game. I'm battling what I think is probably the like end boss bit type thing, but I'm at least 4 hours in, so it's not a case of as short as everyone has necessarily made out, or I've just taken my time with it, one or the other. Yeah, even if it finished like when I think it's going to finish in quite a short amount of time, I'm perfectly happy with what I've seen so far, and I'm quite glad that I've still got a little bit to go back to. I'm not sure that it's got super amounts of replayability. I do think you want to go back to get that the collectibles that are in the game, but beyond that, I'm not sure like you necessarily play it through a load of times. But it's like £25. It's not like horrendously priced, and yeah, as I said, if you own PSVR, this game is a must purchase as far as I'm concerned.
Awesome.
And it's also a good reason to purchase a PSVR. It's that good.
Go strap it on your face, mate. All over your face.
Yeah.
Unless you're a blind mouse, then that doesn't really work, does it?
No, don't do that.
Don't do that.
No. And also, just to plug, I will hopefully have an interview with the developers coming up soon as well.
Awesome. Splendid. You can put them on your face as well. They might not like it as much.
I don't think they'll like that as much.
That's your challenge for the interview, Tim?
No.
Yes.
It's an...
Yes. No, it's your challenge. Put them on your face. On your face, Tim!
No.
Tell me about Tuesdays.
Tuesday is a Tuesday, Dan.
Well done.
As it is every Tuesday. And each and every Tuesday, well, most of them, we are at Loading Bar in Dalston for Tabletop Tuesday. Every week we have a different card or board game. You can come along, play it on the evening, and if you play it that evening, you've got a chance of winning a copy of that game at the end of the night. This week's one is a little bit different. I'm experimenting with something.
Right.
No, before your mind goes there, Dan. And I'm surprised Coleman did the sniggering first, to be honest. But Unlock 2, and I'm saying experiment because this is a escape the room type game. And this is one that is non-destructible, so it will still be usable afterwards. But I'll be interested to see how well this goes down in the bar. There's 3 scenarios in the box, so even if you play it on the night and win it, there's 2 other scenarios you can play at home at another time. Yeah, it's supposed to be good. It looks interesting, and yeah, as I said, I'll be interested to see how this one goes down. It was pretty damn cold for last week's one, so there wasn't as many people as normal.
Well, good news is it's looking tropical this week.
Well, no, it's not that. So yeah, we need people to brave the cold this week as well. But and then you can escape the room back into the cold. But yeah, it should be a good week to come along. As I said, last week was a bit slow to start with, but then we ended up with a decent number there by the end of the night. So that was nice to see. Thank you for everyone that did come along. Hopefully, an equal or greater number will brave the cold this week as well and come and join us for Unlock 2. So that should be a good one. Come along. There are more details on the top left-hand corner of Big Red Barrel, or you can check out the details on our Meetup page. Just search for Tabletop Tuesday on meetup.com.
Meetup. Bacon
Delicious.
and spam.
Bacon.
And we'd just like to say thank you to a couple of people from the internet before we tell you about exciting new places you can find us on the internet. From the Twitter section of the Twitters, I'd like to say thank you to Gabriel, Nelly, and Mark Fraser.
I'd like to thank Richard Kirk, and a big special thanks to Danny Pennell.
Yep.
And also on Facebook, thanks to Big Sexy Ed Price.
Is he either of those things?
Yes.
He is Big Sexy Man.
Price.
And just very briefly, got to mention that we are now available on Spotify and iHeartRadio.
Way!
Ah, yay! Is it internet.com/Spotify at Big Red Barrel?
Yeah, just Google it. Google it. It's not like that. They've got
I know how the internet works, damn it.
They've got code keys instead of usernames, so yeah, you got to Google it or search on their own site functionalities. But there's 2 big sites to be hosted on. People have been asking for a long time for us to be on Spotify in particular, so I'm glad we're on there.
What's iHeartRadio?
iHeartRadio, they do more like radio internet streaming than podcasts, but they've since opened up 2 podcasts. So
we're okay then.
They're very big.
We haven't snuck on there accidentally.
And super fun fact is that both of those give you not just our show, but all the shows that come out through BRB UK. It's like drinking from a big red fire hose, and we recommend you do it. The Big Red thing.
We have a newly launched Big Red Barrel podcasts, like network podcasts, which will display everything in one feed. We may extend that out to iTunes as well at some point, if it goes well enough on Spotify and iHeartRadio, or if there's enough demand for that. But yeah, I'm glad we're on these sites now, and people can stop asking me why we're not on Spotify.
Coleman?
Yes?
Why are we on Spotify?
Because people keep asking why we're not on Spotify.
People like the Spotify.
Because Spotify, for the little bit behind the scenes, Spotify went, "Hey, we now do podcasts," and everyone went, "Yay, I love podcasts." And then they went on Spotify and went, "Wait a minute, my favourite podcast isn't on there." And that's because to get on Spotify podcasts, you need to be approved partner of Spotify, which at the time was near impossible. But luckily, our podcasting host service, Libsyn, they are a Spotify partner now, so they added us, which was very
marvellous.
Well, once we requested and stuff. So that was very nice of them.
Yes. Thank you, peoples.
So, that is your lot for this week, ladies and gentlemen. We've got to get out of here because Coleman's going to go to his top secret job.
Snowman.
Yeah.
Snowman building.
No.
Oh, that wouldn't keep him busy all year.
A snowman.
I'm the one who goes out at night and puts the snow down on the roads.
Snowman.
Yeah. He's like, I'll get those pesky gravelers back. So blame Coleman when you slip and fall over on your ass.
Sorry.
Damn it, Coleman.
Yeah. No, damn it, Coleman!
Anytime anyone falls over, you fall over, you see someone else fall over, so you have to yell, "Damn it, Coleman."
It does make a nice replacement
Yep.
for Thanks Obama, so, you know.
Yeah, no. Damn it, Coleman!
Yep.
So anyway, we've got to go. So I have been Dan.
I might have been Tim.
And I've been Coleman, unfortunately.
You certainly have. So thank you ever so much for listening, ladies and gents. Remember, internet.com/thing/BigRedBarel.
You always give the worst advice.
Probably find it there. Indeed, I give the worst advice. That's why I'm not a practicing medic anymore. So,
no
yes.
slashing necessary.
Or president.
And
Dan for Slough president.
Yeah, down for Slough. Making Slough, making Slough sloffier
Roundabout
again.
governor.
I think.
Putting the low in Slough.
Yeah. There's no right way to really respond to that, is there? No.
Putting the slur.
The slur. Putting the G in Slough. G. That's what I'm doing. So anyway, we're out of here. Thanks ever so much for listening, ladies and gentlemen, and until next time, dear listeners, toodle bye.
You and your ears are quite welcome.
For the podcasting goodness that you just heard.
Why not roll on over
To BigRedBarel.com.
for more podcasts?
News, reviews, and videos from the biggest, reddest site on the internet. BigRedBarel.com.